I'm looking at you.
As the FBI looks further into last Sunday's shooting in Orlando, the Council of American-Islamic Relations invited agents into the mosque where the shooter worshipped in South Florida, and the idea was to show the Muslim community is also mourning as well and wants to help those who were affected by that shooting. And joining us this morning to talk more about that, Hassan Shibli, Tampa CAIR Director. Thanks so much for being with us. I
thanks for having us.
I didn't mean to cut you off. We were going live at the moment.
No problem.
So Hassan, first off, let me ask you. A lot of anger seems to come with a shooting like this because early on, and I don't think anything is even clear now, early on it seemed like it was a terror attack and he had ties to ISIS or believed in the Quran. But automatically, there's that connection. Where do you stand now?
Well, I think we have to remember that, look, we're all in this together. We're all Americans. He attacked all of us. He wasn't a Muslim attacking Christians or Americans. He was a criminal who attacked us human beings, who attacked us Americans. It's important that people put things in perspective. Look, out of the last 473 mass shootings that happened in America, only 3 involved Muslims. And that's 3 too many. So we have to stand united. We can't allow fear and hate to divide us and turn us against each other. Rather, we need to stand united and do what we can to help the victims and assist the victims and not let fear and hate divide us and turn us against each other as Americans and as human beings.
So there are 1.6 billion Muslims across the world, and I would say less than 5% of them seem to, and you and I have had this conversation before, seem to misinterpret the Quran into violence, into killings if you don't believe what they believe. And that's what seems to be happening not only here domestically, but internationally as well. Why is there a misinterpretation of the Quran?
Well, it's actually less than 1%, and it's all connected to warfare. It's connected to politics. It's connected to land. Let's not forget that as America, we've actually bombed many Muslim-majority countries over the last few years, and we've actually killed hundreds of thousands of civilians, and that's created an environment that's fertile for violence and extremism. Now, terrorism is never justified, but these terrorists, ISIS, they're not about establishing a kingdom of heaven. They're about establishing a kingdom of earth. They want power, they want land, and they will kill anyone who gets in their way, and they will twist religion, they will twist politics to justify their ends. But ultimately, they're about gaining more power. They're not about religion or God.
So they're not about the Quran. They're about, like you say, money, power, and land.
Right. ISIS is making millions of dollars every single day in oil sales. The Quran clearly forbids killing civilians. It clearly forbids harming innocent human life, and that's all they do. They don't represent us. If you want to know who represents Islam, look at America's greatest champion. Look at the greatest. Look at Muhammad Ali and many people like him who embody what Islam means. Muhammad Ali refused to go to war because Islam forbids killing innocent civilians, and he didn't believe in going to war because he was a devout Muslim. He's what represents Islam. Don't make these fringe terrorists represent us, just as we don't let fringe terrorists represent Christianity or Judaism.
How do you separate yourself then?
Well, look, we are proud of what we're about. If you want to know what Islam is about, come and meet the American Muslim community.
I know, but how do you separate yourself? I mean, because you see it all over the news.
Sure.
How do you, I mean, as a director of CAIR here in Tampa, how do you separate yourself, your community, from a man like Mateen? Well, and other terrorists like him.
Sure. Just like I think the Christian community separates itself from the abortion clinic bombers, from the people who shot up Charleston.
I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the same.
I don't know. I don't think it's too different. Look, the Planned Parenthood shooter shot up Planned Parenthood, killed several civilians, thinking he was doing it in the name of Christianity, in the name of God. Every religious group has horrible people who do horrible things in its name. But what we're doing at CAIR is we're trying to win friends and make relationships by serving the people through Islam's message of mercy and compassion. So when the horrific attack happened in Orlando, we went on the ground, we assisted the victims. We've actually raised over $75,000 now online to support the victims. People can go online and support us through that. And we're trying to bring the community together through tolerance and interaction and recognize what we have in common is much more than that which divides us.
So that's my next question now. Moving forward, how can you bring that connection? How can you bring that unity so that folks at home who are Christians or of different faith, not Muslims, how can you bring them closer to you and your faith so that they can rely on you and believe in everything that you're saying right now?
Through personal interaction and through community service. We believe as people get to know each other, we break down the walls of ignorance. Ignorance leads to misunderstanding. Misunderstanding leads to fear. Fear leads to hate. and hate ultimately leads to violence and discrimination and abuse. So we can overcome that just by getting to know each other and recognizing that we're all the creation of God and our humanity unites us. So I invite your viewers, go to our website, CAIR-Florida.org, and get information about our interfaith dinner that we're having this Tuesday. We're inviting LGBTQ leaders, Christian leaders, atheist leaders, Muslim leaders, Jewish leaders to come together and break bread together and find ways of working together for a better society where children of all people, regardless of race or religion, can grow proud of who they are.
Have you heard from the LGBT community at all, or no?
Oh, absolutely.
You have.
From the first morning that we heard about these horrific attacks, we invited their leadership to our CAIR office in Orlando. We had a joint press conference together condemning the violence and saying that we will not let hate divide us, and we stand united as Christians, Muslims, regardless of our sexual orientation, as atheists, as Jews, standing united against violence, against terrorism, regardless of who perpetrates it or who the victims are.
Hassan, it's great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
My friend. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.